Okay, guys. So excuse a bit of a mess in my room, but my wife and I just filmed like a little thing on our podcast channel slash vlog channel. It's called Rob and Dan. It's in the featured channels in my page. Shameless plug. Anyway, another offline video, and it's partially because I hung out with my wife and we did some fun stuff today, and I have to edit the podcast. Anyway, I decided to watch the movie Cuties. The reason why is because I've heard Sneako talk about it about 100 times now, and every single time, or at least recently, he keeps telling us that the movie is about a woman or a young girl who rejects Islam and then finds out at the end that Western society is terrible and goes back to Islam. And something got rolling in my head that I think maybe Sneako lies sometimes. And I know you're probably thinking like, how could you possibly think that, Papa God? I think it's because I've heard him say words before. And I was like, wow, this guy might be lying. So in the middle of actually the video that I did yesterday where Sneako and Voice Critical, I covered them having an interaction and talking to each other, I was kind of reading the plot or whatever you call it. And I was like, this doesn't sound quite like what Sneako's saying. And then there are people in the comments saying like, yeah, that's not at all what it is. You're not wrong. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just bite the bullet and watch it. And, you know, I did. And guys, Sneako lied about the movie. If you get through it, it's blatantly not about a girl who rejects Islam and then goes back to Islam after. It's actually a coming-of-age story. Very quick synopsis. Is that the right word? We'll say rundown, so I don't sound like a silly goose. Basically, young girl moves to France from, I believe, Senegal, and she has a hard time transitioning there, right? She rejects her more traditional values and, you know, finds other friends who they want to dance. And the dancing is not particularly great. I think that we all understand that. It's definitely uncomfortable watching parts of that movie, for sure. Although we don't talk about all of the movie, there's a point where she stabs a young boy with a pen in his hand and throws another girl into a lake who can't swim. So I feel like maybe, guys, there's other things to be outraged about, okay? I was like, I literally like was like, what the, like loudly, because I watched this with my wife too, and I was like, what's happening? She throws a girl in a lake. Nobody said a word about this because she wanted to go in a dance competition, and they replaced her. So she threw one of the girls in a lake to replace her. It was actually unhinged behavior. Anyway, she's there. It's clear that she's a bit lonely. She doesn't really have any friends, and so she makes friends with some girls who want to enter a dance competition, and they idolize these weird other dancers who happen to be meanies. You get to a point where you find that out, and their dancing is a bit inappropriate, and that dancing goes from a bit inappropriate to very inappropriate because the girl, the main character, I think the way they pronounce it is Ami. She wants to be in the group so bad that she like practices her own dance moves, but she watches very overly sexualized like music, dancing music and stuff, and then she teaches the other girls the moves, and it does get very uncomfortable, of course. And so throughout the movie, that's what happens. And one thing that I really want to stress is the movie does an excellent job of setting the tone that nothing that they're doing is acceptable or appropriate. And this is something that bothers me a little bit. Okay, it's that, you know, I never watched the movie because, you know, people were like, oh my God, it's so bad, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't that bad. To be absolutely honest with you, if you couldn't sit through that movie, I would say, because you thought it was too sexualized, I'd say that I think it's time for us to like become a little bit more mature and grow up. It was uncomfortable watching scenes, of course, absolutely. Definitely. Like there's a scene where like she stole her cousin's phone through the movie, and then he catches her with the phone. He's like, give me my phone back. And she locks herself in the bathroom and takes a picture of her no bits and puts it on the internet, onto like their version of Instagram, I believe. It's definitely yucky. Thankfully, she didn't actually do that in the real world. Just so you guys know. She didn't actually do it. And that actually has repercussions because even the girls she's in, you know, they're like, this is too much. And she's like, well, I thought you wanted us to be taken more seriously. Like, we're adults. So I did this. Like, it was, but you have to watch it to get the full grasp of the situation. There's certainly inappropriate parts of it, but the reality is that like, it's not something you couldn't sit through. It just isn't something you can't sit through. And if you were that uncomfortable, I think we just need to be a little bit more mature. It wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad. It was weird. But it wasn't like that bad. To me, like I understand like pedophilia is bad. But the constant like disproportionate outrage over this film after watching it, to me, screams at, like, relax. I'm not going to say that you're hiding something, but I think that the internet tone that we have set right now is fucking insane when you really retract everything. Like, we are frankly obsessed with pedophilia, grooming, and sexual assault on the internet to the point where we're calling 19-year-olds groomers. We're talking to 17-year-olds and constantly having the wrong conversation about everything. Grooming now is when, like, it's like the words are losing meanings, right? I understand that there might be some people, yucky people, who would watch that and go, oh, I like this. Of course, that's going to happen anywhere. Like if you're buying a bathing suit for your daughter and they use like a child model to model the bathing suit, guess what? Some fucking disgusting piece of shit, most likely man, is going to look at that and they're going to get aroused. And that's unfortunate. But you need to, at the very least, have a proportionate criticism to the film. The film does, an excellent job of showing you that nothing that they're doing is correct. And it all boils up to this dance show where they're being overly, like, perverse, sexual, whatever, and everybody in the crowd boos them. Like, the movie says this is wrong over and over and over again. And, like, it constantly does that. From the start, it enforces that this is bad behavior that you shouldn't be engaging in. But the thing is that the reason that the young girl is rejecting her more traditional roots is because her mother, her father, is deciding to marry another woman and bring the woman into the family. And it makes the mother really upset. Her mother, his already wife, really upset. And that's where it starts. It starts by the values being too traditional. When she starts having her period, all of a sudden they make her cook, like, all of the food for the father's wedding, which takes like hours and hours. They put like way too much responsibility because she's a woman now, right? And it's showing that there are flaws for a young girl experience, or perceived flaws for a young girl when it comes to overly traditional, I guess, Islamic culture, but then also flaws when it comes to Western culture, for sure. But if you watch the end of the movie, she starts crying in the middle. She has like an existential crisis and starts crying on stage because she realized like what she's doing is wrong. It's not what she wants to do. And a lot of it is just her expressing her rebellious phase. She goes home, and there's like a very stylistic portion where on the bed are the gross clothes that she danced in, and then the traditional wedding gown she was supposed, or not wedding gown, the traditional gown she was supposed to wear for her father's wedding. And she chooses just regular old blue jeans and a nice shirt. Nothing yucky. And the movie's just about a young girl struggling to fit in a new society, struggling with those more traditional values that seem to be oppressive to women, right? Because that mother is basically, for the most part, forced to have another woman in the life, even though she doesn't want them to. And to be clear, they have like a person come in. There's a guy, I don't know what you call him, I don't want to be disrespectful, but he seems to be some kind of like a spiritual individual in their culture, and says you can leave if the burden is too much. But the reality is, like, her kids, she would have to like basically leave her kids, and it would break up the family, and it's just like a really unfortunate thing. And so it seems to be like, hey, some parts of this traditional culture are oppressive to women, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to reject that. There's a point where they're talking about how her auntie, or her mother's auntie, so her great aunt, I guess, is like, yeah, when I first got my period, I was basically 11, and I was already arranged to get married. And it's like, wow, like that sounds horrible. That's a little kid shouldn't be getting engaged. I wouldn't know how old the guy was she was getting engaged to, but that shouldn't be a thing. So it shows that the flaws in that, and the ways that can have negative impacts on young women, young girls. And then the over-sexualization is like the flaws of some aspects of like Western culture as well, right? Because nothing is perfect. There's criticisms to Eastern cultures, Western cultures, every type of culture, and she just decides to be a normal kid. And it ends off in her jump roping. She doesn't go to the wedding. She puts the normal clothes on, she goes outside, and she starts jump roping. And for some reason, as the camera pans up, she jumps really high. Like, she jumps like 50 feet high with a smile on her face. And the tone that you get out of it, the message from that movie, is that she chose to just be like happy and normal, not overly sexualized, not overly covered, happy and in control of herself. And there was a really nice moment when their mom like defended her. It was really cute. It was that part was cute. Again, uncomfortable parts of the movie, but overall the movie wasn't really that bad. I wouldn't sit here and it's not rewatchable. I wouldn't say I'd watch again. But the reason I really wanted to watch it is because Sneako keeps talking about how it's like a rejection of Western culture, Islam, this and that thing. And I need you guys to understand something. At the end of the day, Sneako isn't like the rest of us. For the rest of us, I'd like to say, for the most part, we engage in information and then we listen to and extrapolate. That information creates our perspective. So you watch a thing, you look at statistics, you look at data, and you go, what does it mean? And then after you're able to see what that statistic, that data means, of course you have to sift through. Sometimes maybe people could be biased, but you'll come out at the other end with like, oh, here's the meaning. There's no person could ever watch that movie and think it was about how like Eastern culture was better than Western culture, or the reverse, frankly. But Sneako decided that's what it was about. Either he's morbidly unintelligent, as I am morbidly obese, or he's lying to you. And that's it. That's it. That's the whole movie. It really was, again, it wasn't that bad. It was uncomfortable, definitely at moments, but that the movie made it explicitly clear that everything that they were doing that made you uncomfortable was wrong. You could still have your criticisms, but very clear, and I'm not trying to shit on anybody, but we need to kind of grow up a little bit as a culture, and like online. There's a lot, constantly every day I kind of see stuff that's like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, it's not this, it wasn't going to be the downfall of our society. You should be able to sit through the movie, even if you find it uncomfortable, before doing commentary on it. And I'm partially to blame as well, because I fell for all the ridiculous like anti-hype. But you should be able to sit through it. You can have your criticisms, but overall, if you watch the movie, it has a good message, and it's really just about throwing other girls into lakes and stabbing people in the hand with pencils. No, that part was fucking crazy, though. Holy Jesus. It's just about a coming-of-age story for a girl who's struggling to fit into a new society. That's all it's about. And she goes down bad paths. And she, at the end, recorrects herself, and she's able to be happy. And a lot of that is tied into the mother, like, listening to her, her like, concerns. It's not that bad. And that's pretty much it. So would I recommend watching it? I don't know if I'd recommend it. It was fine. But be careful of people like Sneako who are trying to weaponize things against you, because like you'd have to be an idiot to translate it the way Sneako did. And that's because he's just in either full grift mode, or he's just like, his brain has just rotted to the point where he can't extrapolate information correctly. But either way, he's an unreliable narrator, and people should stop engaging with him unless they just want to see basically somebody make a fucking fool out of himself. So that's that.